Dear friends, this is Bishop Daniel Thomas of the Diocese of Toledo. Please join me now in praying together our diocesan prayer. Heavenly Father, with the redeeming cross of Christ Jesus, your Son, and the gifts of your Holy Spirit, renew and strengthen us, so that by our prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, we may foster holy disciples, holy families, and holy vocations, so as to become a more holy diocese of Toledo. We turn to Our Lady, Queen of the Most Holy Rosary, for her intercession and never-failing prayers. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Annunciation Radio presents Faith Alive, highlighting the many ways Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Toledo provides love and support for those in need. And now, your host for Faith Alive, Executive Director of Catholic Charities in Toledo, Rodney Schuster.
Hello and welcome to Faith Alive, the program that shares how the love of Jesus Christ is provided through the ministries of Catholic Charities throughout the Diocese of Toledo. I'm your host, Rodney Schuster, Executive Director for Catholic Charities, and today we're going to focus our programming on the Knights of Columbus. And I don't know about all of you, but when I was growing up, my dad was involved in the Knights of Columbus Bowling League. They had dinners, they had fish fries. They always seemed to be doing something, and he would be helping them in events and raise money. And so, the Knights of Columbus has been around a long time. They've been part of the Catholic fabric for a long time. And so today we just want to unpack that a little bit, learn more about the history of the Knights of Columbus, learn more about, how you perhaps can get involved at a Knights of Columbus at your parish, or even if your parish doesn't have a Knights of Columbus chapter, is it possible to start one? So we are very fortunate to have Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus, which that sounds like a pretty big role, but he does that on his free time as a volunteer. And in his regular work, most of you probably know that Willi does head up the facilities of La Posada Emergency Family Shelter in Toledo as part of Catholic Charities Ministries. So, Willi, welcome to Faith Alive.
Good morning. Glad to be here again. Thank you.
Glad to have you. And so, Willi, maybe just give for the audience just a brief history of the Knights of Columbus, how they started, why they started, what was the purpose?
Yep. The Knights of Columbus started back in October of 1981. Father Michael, Blessed Michael J. McGivney, a 29-year-old assistant pastor of St. Mary's Church in New Haven, Connecticut, noticed that men were being drawn away from the church and drawn into other societies, very secret societies and organizations that weren't true to the faith and the teachings of the Catholic Church, which it concerned the young priest. So he met with a group of men in the basement of the church, talked about his concerns, and in addition to that, he was also concerned about when that breadwinner, the man of that family at that time, would pass away because of injuries on the job or otherwise, who took care of the family, who took care of the widow, who took care of the orphans. So it was like a dual purpose. So supporting the family and keeping the man involved in the Catholic faith in support of his family and building the Catholic structure for a family, in addition to making sure widows and orphans are taken care of. That blossomed into the first council at St. Mary's in New Haven.
And what year again was this, Willi?
It started, and that very first meeting was October 2nd, 1981.
1981?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was much older.
1891.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was much older than that. I was like, wow, this is really a fledgling organization. They have really come a long way.
And it's my fault. I'm reading too many lines here.
That's all right.
October 2nd, 1881 was that very first meeting, and the organization took off as a institution the following year in 1882.
Okay.
It all supports the Catholic teachings of the Church, going back to the foundations of our sacraments. and building upon them in support of the family. That's based on 3 principles: charity, unity, and fraternity. Charity for the poor, charity for the forgotten, the lost, the forsaken, and then unity, building that camaraderie among men and among the families of the Catholic Church in order to continue to support the Catholic Church. And then fraternity, developing healthy relationships with other young men, other men between one generation to another generation, which as a young priest he saw as very important, because he was seeing too many things get in the way of the development of a family and how it functioned in society. I wish I could say that today's society is any different than back in 1881, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, the church and the families of our church are facing similar struggles, just on a greater magnitude. There were serious concerns and serious issues back then, which our founder saw, and some of those are still the same today, unfortunately.
You listen to Faith Alive. Our guest is Willi Meyer, and we are focusing our program today on the Knights of Columbus. Really, over the years, then, over the century, has the Knights of Columbus evolved at all? Has it changed at all, or is these 3 core values been the same, and has it pretty much remained the same in regards to charity, unity, and fraternity, or some other things kind of occurred over the years?
Those are the core values of our organization, and then we added the 4th degree, and the 4th degree focuses in on patriotism and how the Catholic Church has been instrumental in supporting America, supporting countries, supporting freedoms that we all enjoy. If you look back at the history of the America and the number of Catholics from all levels of society and military and government had an impact on the development and the progress of our country, you'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at the number of priests who sacrificed their lives to make sure that they were available to the injured on the battlefields or on the warships. Governors and presidents standing up for 2 words to make sure that they got in to the Constitution and on our money that we use every single day. So you're looking at how the Catholic Church supports America and how the Catholic Church supports sovereignty of countries and nations. And it's a big part of that as well.
So you mentioned 4th degree, and I often hear that term, 4th degree knight. Is that mean, so is 4th degree just specifically for patriotism, and so is the other 3 like 1st degree, 2nd degree? Can you explain that a little bit? Because I hear that and I'm like, okay, what does that mean to be a 4th degree, or can you be a 2nd degree, or share that a little bit? That kind of
we have evolved. The organization has evolved to where right now 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degrees, the virtues of charity, unity, and fraternity, are all demonstrated and discussed and provided to new members in one meeting. We used to have 3 meetings over the course of a year. Wow. And we found that we were losing good men because time and commitment and interest, and we wanted to make sure that we were fulfilling our original obligation of supporting men and their families. So right now we have 1 degree. It's called the exemplification degree. It covers all 3 virtues, those being charity, unity, and fraternity. And that's what we consider the 3rd degree part of our organization. The 4th degree is in addition to. You don't have to do it. If you'd like to do it, their focus is on the family and patriotism and supporting our country. They do a lot of work around Veterans Day, Memorial Day, making sure that our fallen are properly recognized and taken care of. They're in the VA homes. They're at the VA centers. We have one gentleman on my staff. He drives veterans to a clinic in West Virginia every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Wow.
So that, they get the care and treatment that they need, because it's not available in that community here in Ohio. The closest VA clinic is in West Virginia. So that's a big part of their work, is serving the veterans and serving at patriotic events and providing the history of the Knights of Columbus when it comes to the growth and development of America.
You're listening to Faith Alive, and Willi Meyer is our guest, State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. Willi, so on the, if you're interested in becoming a knight, do you have to be part of, like, if you say, gosh, do I have to make a decision? I want to be a first degree, second degree, third degree, a fourth degree, or can you just say, I just want to really focus on becoming a knight, and then I'll have to, discern what God wants me to do after that?
The easiest way to join is to go to kofc.org, and on the very first page, you'll see a Getting Start, Join Now. And you fill in the information, you let them know where you live, what your parish is, and they will be sending you information via the email to educate you as to what the Knights of Columbus are. They will contact the local council that's in your area. They will contact you, and they will help you become a member and discern where you see yourself.
Awesome. You're listening to Faith Alive. We're going to head to break. We'll be right back.
Every weekday afternoon at 3, join us for our live and interactive Divine Mercy Chaplet. Do you have something or someone you're praying for? Imagine the power of hundreds of people praying for your intention. We have several ways for you to share your request. You can visit our app and go to the prayer request button, send an email to chapletprayer@gmail.com, or call our prayer request line at 419-868-2966. Here at Annunciation Radio, we're praying for you.
Do you have something you'd like to ask our bishop? Most Reverend Daniel Lee Thomas answers questions from our listeners each and every week on the Bishop's Corner. Send in your questions about the faith, today's cultural trends, diocesan news and events, prayer life, anything on your mind. Click the Bishop's Corner tab at AnnunciationRadio.com or on our app and listen for his answer Thursdays at 4:30 p.m., Fridays at 11, and Saturdays at noon on Annunciation Radio.
Hello friends, Peter Range here, Chief Executive Officer of Ohio Right to Life, with an urgent update for you about an extreme and dangerous initiative. Planned Parenthood and the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights have introduced a ballot initiative here in Ohio that would permit abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, eliminate any parental rights if you have a teenage daughter seeking an abortion or a sex change operation, and eliminate health and safety standards for women. Please visit Ohio Right to Life today at ohiolife.org to help warn Ohioans of this extreme and dangerous initiative.
Now, back to Faith Alive with Rodney Schuster, Executive Director of Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Toledo.
Welcome back to Faith Alive. I'm your host, Rodney Schuster, Executive Director for Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Toledo. In today's program, we are talking all things Knights of Columbus, how they were formed, what their core values are, how you can become involved if you're interested, and much, much more. Our guest is Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. So really, just real quick, and I want to get back into the membership if you're interested in levels and all that, but so when you're the State Executive Secretary, does that mean for all the Knights in Ohio, you are the Executive Secretary? Is that what that means?
What it means is I serve to the pleasure of the state officers. There's 6 state officers.
Okay.
And that's the state council.
And the state officers represent each diocese?
Each diocese. There's one officer per diocese.
Okay.
They come up through the ranks, all the way from the warden all the way up to the state deputy. The state deputy currently is Mark Siracusa, is from our diocese, St. John the 23rd.
I know real well, yep.
And He appointed me as the executive secretary, so I serve to his pleasure and the pleasure of the officers that are serving currently for the 21-23 season. So I have 6 more weeks to go.
Now, will you continue in a capacity like that, or are you just going to go back to a quote-unquote normal night?
I'll be going back to more diocesan functions and more diocesan responsibilities. There's a new state deputy coming in, Jeff Kiliani, who is out of the Youngstown Diocese, and he has his staff, and I met at length for the last 6 months with his new state executive secretary, and went over stuff, and it's not new for him because he's done it. He did it, I don't know, 3 or 4 terms before. So just kind of brought him up to date. And so he'll be taking over on July 1st, and I'll be coming down to the Toledo diocesan level and serving in the capacities that they find for me.
Great. Now, when you talk about the Diocese of Toledo, how many, are they called chapters, Willie?
Councils.
Councils. How many councils are in the Diocese of Toledo right now?
We have 68.
68, okay. And
68 councils, yes.
Is that number larger, smaller than it used to be?
It's slightly smaller than it used to be, partly because of the combination of parishes and parishes twinning. We've had to merge councils together, and sometimes it's as painful as closing a church, because they all have their own personalities, they all have their own drive, and for some of these as parishes, they've been around for 100, 120, 125 years. And so it takes a lot.
Yeah. You're listening to Faith Alive, and we're talking about the Knights of Columbus, and our guest is Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary, at least for the time being.
For the time being.
His term will be coming up. Willi, there also have been new councils started, and, of course, you were part of the one that's, I guess, more recent, if we want to say, at St. Joan of Arc. So share how that, transpired, what was involved in order to get to the point where you're saying, hey, we want to have a council here at St. Joan of Arc, and how did that transaction go? The
invitation for a new council went to the pastor, and at that time it was Father Adam Hertzfeld, who happens to be our state chaplain, who I had the pleasure of having dinner and attending masses this weekend with. And he met with Mark and other members of the diocesan staff, and had decided, after he'd been in his position at St. Joan of Arc for a year, that it was time for him to begin this. Father Adam's history with the Knights of Columbus is extensive. His family has been very much involved in the Knights of Columbus, as is he. And he found the Knights of Columbus to be a very strong support and a very strong place for him to go to as he was discerning in the seminaries and during his formation. And he speaks to that quite eloquently in his purpose for having the Knights of Columbus. He sent out a letter to every gentleman in the parish, inviting them to a meet and greet kind of afternoon after 11:30 Mass. And I was already a member, but I was at the partnering parish, St. Pat's of Heatherdowns, that Lutheran church down the street.
Oh, careful here. This is all out of faith and charity, really.
We're doing it. So I was down the street because that's where the closest council was. And when the invitation came out, it doesn't say if you're a Knight or Columbus or anything. So I went to the meeting and listened. And about 6 weeks later, we took in 66 new people.
Wow.
Which was great for a beginning.
Yeah.
Some of them were transfers. I was a transfer. And it was kind of interesting because at that time we had the 3 separate degrees, 3 separate meetings. And so when they came in for their first meeting, I was sitting in the outer circle. They were sitting in the inner circle. And men who I've known for years are looking at me going, why is Willie sitting over there and he's not sitting over here with us? So, you get to share the fact that you've been a knight. And you end up developing relationships and a camaraderie with men across the parish that you've seen at a distance. You've flipped hamburgers shoulder to shoulder. You've carried garbage from one can to the next. And now you know them on a different level. So we started out with 66. I I had the opportunity to be the financial secretary for the first 7 years of that council, along with Michael Bragg, who was the Grand Knight, because he was the only one qualified amongst the 66 to do that. Okay. I was the only one qualified to do the FS. So, we got them going, got them started, and we have a good set of officers right now. I think we're in the third term since I stepped down, because I was taking on more responsibilities at the state level. And it's, right now I think we got 126, 127 members at Joan of Arc. And, we're hoping to grow that a little bit more and be speaking with and talking with the younger families and the younger men, who was the focus of Blessed Father Michael J. McGivney. I mean, that's where he focused his work on until he passed away.
You listen to Faith Alive, and we're talking about Knights of Columbus and the Diocese of Toledo, and also just, nationwide. And our guest is Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. So, Willi, when you start a council like that and you see growth, that's just got to be brings energy, I would think, to men in the parish, and then again, as regarding the three core values, if you will, charity, unity, fraternity, and then patriotism, just gives that focus and a rallying point for people to get involved. And that had to have been pretty dynamic from your perspective, being a member of St. Joan of Arc.
It was. And, it's a lot of people see what the Knights do as far as the pancake breakfasts and the fish fries and the auctions and the large events that are raising money for charity. And that's all well and good. But there's also that component at the meeting level where we spend time before the Blessed Sacrament, where we spend time doing a scriptural rosary, where we spend time in prayer and solitude. Currently, Monsignor Borger is our pastor at Joan of Arc, and we had a touchy issue with our Grand Knight, his health, and so I kind of took over for a period of time, and every meeting, we spent time in adoration. Every meeting, we spent time focusing in on our faith and what our faith really is, because without that, you can't do charity. Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's the difference between raising money and raising money for a cause. Yeah. And so any good organizer, any good person can raise thousands of dollars. But when there's a purpose, when there's a cause behind it, it's more than just raising money. You're doing it for something else.
You listen to Faith Alive, and our guest is Willi Meyer, the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. Willi, has that been the most recent additional council in our diocese, or have there been any others added in the last few years?
We've had 3 others added. The one that I'm most familiar with is St. Patrick in Grand Rapids and St. Louis in Custer. I was the district deputy at that time and assisted in the formation of that council. I think they're up to about 50 members right now.
Nice.
A small agrarian rural council, but they are doing mega stuff, and they were already doing a lot of stuff, and really walking their faith and talking their faith. And the Knights of Columbus coming in just added another dynamic and added another dimension, and gave them a larger focus. And they are just accomplishing so much out there under the direction of Father Walter Toscano.
Awesome. You listen to Faith Alive, and we're talking about the Knights of Columbus. Willi, so as a parishioner and as a man, that you had this opportunity, but of course many of our members of Knights of Columbus are married. So is there a role for spouses in Knights of Columbus? Because, if you're going to meetings and you're doing, pancake breakfasts and other things, I mean, there's a consideration there for the first vocation, marriage.
Correct. The focus of the family is a large part of the Knights of Columbus. I would be remiss if I didn't say I think the Knights of Columbus got away from that for a period of time. And we have, for the last, I'd say 7, 8, 9 years, had a stronger focus on the family and what can the Knights of Columbus offer to family. And leading in faith is the number one. And then guarding the family. Who is the family? An unwed mother, a mother with one child, a family of 16. Who is the family? And protecting that family and protecting them in the faith in the face of the church. And then serving others. And everybody knows, it sounds cliche, but behind every successful man is a woman. Mm-hmm. And, I wouldn't be where I'm at the state level if it wasn't for the support of my wife. Mark wouldn't be where he's at without the support of his wife. And I don't think we can say it much more than we do, but we have to, because they really kind of bring a dynamic to it. While the guys are over in their meeting and organizing stuff, the women are right there doing all the nuts and the bolts and the fine tuning of certain things. There was like 7 or 8 women on the site committee for the state convention this weekend. I'm convinced that, they made that stuff move a lot smoother because they could see things that sometimes us men don't see. And that's okay. Yeah. Because you got that balance. And I think with that balance, you get a good perspective. And I think you cover a lot more. We had children at the state convention this year. Wow. Which I was thrilled with. Yeah. Now, others don't see the importance of having children at such a big affair. But for me, it was a different perspective, and it really lent to where the conferences are going and where the councils are working. And we honored the youth of the year. I mean, we honor youth every month at the council level. Then we honor them at the diocesan level. And then once a year, we of all the nominees, we pick one. And, this young man, his family's been involved in Knights of Columbus, and he can remember going back 7, 8 years of age and going with his father to flip pancakes and carry garbage bags. And he knew who the Knights of Columbus were at the grassroots level. And, and he had a balance because he couldn't be there at the state convention this year because he was going to prom. So even though the state convention was there, even though he was getting an honor at the state level, he knew where his priorities were. And that's something that is supported by the Knights of Columbus.
You're listening to Faith Alive. We're going to head to break. We'll be right back.
I met someone on a trip recently. She came to me with a baby and said, "This baby's because of your trip to New Jersey last year." She said, "I had an abortion in high school, and it felt like I was damned. And then, after hearing the message of the gospel at your event, I realized I was redeemable, and that God's love tells me who I am, not my past mistakes." She got right with God, made a good confession, and decided to have a baby with her husband shortly thereafter. It's amazing how the message of the gospel fixes every problem in the human heart. I don't care where you've been or what you've done. God's love for you is bigger. Now, Chris, you don't understand. My sin is so big. What I did is bigger than what God, in all his power, did for me on the cross. I'm glad I could put words to what you were thinking so you could hear how silly it sounds. Come home. He loves you. And what he did for you is bigger than the power of any sin in your life. This is Chris Stefanik from RealLifeCatholic.com.
Dare great things for Christ. I'm Father Nathan Cromley, urging you to listen for me here on Annunciation Radio. Dare Great Things is on every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. and Sunday at 10:30 a.m. I dare you to listen.
Listen to how St. John Paul II invites us to love the people who fill our lives. He states, "Since in the Sacred Heart, the believer encounters the symbol and the living image of the infinite love of Christ, which itself spurs us to love one another. Imagine a world where families are full of faith, love, and the Lord's peace." To learn about the Sacred Heart Enthronement and the Sacred Heart Devotion, visit welcomehisheart.com.
Now, back to Faith Alive with Rodney Schuster, Executive Director of Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Toledo.
Hello and welcome back to Faith Alive. I'm your host, Rodney Schuster, Executive Director for Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Toledo. And today we are talking about all things Knights of Columbus, their history, what their core values are, what they do in our diocese, what they do nationwide. And our guest is Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. He heads a council, or he's part of a council at Joan of Arc, St. Joan of Arc here in Toledo. And Willi, before break, you were sharing a little bit about this recognition for this young man. So
Yes.
How are the Knights, and you kind of said that, there's inclusion of family and trying to do more of that. So intentionally, what is being done, statewide, and what's being done at
Yes.
the local level, like at St. Joan of Arc for that?
Same thing. I mean, every month we have a night of the month that we recognize. We recognize a family of the month, and they don't have to be a Knight family. They can be a family inside the parish that is doing great things and doing important jobs for faith life. Then we recognize a youth, and we recognize a volunteer. All those nominations from each of the councils, go up to the diocese, and then they identify a diocesan level, and then we send it up to the state for recognition. And once a year, we honor a family. Once a year, we honor a youth. Once a year, we honor a chaplain or a member of the vocations. So it's important for us to continually support at the grassroots level, because you don't become, state council, you don't become the Supreme Council in New Haven, Connecticut, if you don't have that stuff at the grassroots level.
You listen to Faith Alive, and our guest is Willi Meyer. We're talking about the Knights of Columbus. Willi, I always think of the Knights of Columbus, the pancake breakfast, the
Yes.
fish fries, which, tie into the charity, unity, fraternity. Do you have members who say, gosh, I'm not much of a people person, and I just, that's just a little bit too much for me, or maybe even physically, they
Yes.
might have limitation.
Mhm.
Is there a role for folks like that in the Knights of Columbus?
We had a gentleman. I was a financial secretary, as I mentioned, and I think we were like in our second year, and the dues came out, and he sent me a letter, and he said, "I'm 72 years old. I can't, get to the meetings anymore like I used to. I'm not comfortable driving at night. It takes me 2 hours to get up in the morning." I mean, he went through a long list of reasons, and he says, "I really don't know if being a Knight is really appropriate for me anymore because I can't do anything." And I just wrote at the bottom of his letter, I said, "You go to Mass. I know you go to Mass every day. Do you pray? I know you pray." And I said, "If you do nothing else but pray for us, you're a Knight of Columbus." And I folded it back up and I sent it back to him. And, to his dying day, he prayed for us.
Wow.
That's as important as a person who pulls the garbage out of the bucket and carries it across the street to the dumpster. Having prayer is the foundation of our faith. Having prayer is the foundation of our organization. If we don't have our faith and we don't have prayer, we don't have an organization. Amen. We spent the site committee at the St. Convention, they spend a lot of time making sure that we had 24-hour adoration. They made special time making sure that we had a very solemn place, a very sacred place for our masses. The Memorial Mass on Saturday morning, the Sunday Mass on Sunday morning. Music, sacristans. The fourth degree was heavily involved in the recession of the both masses. So they spent a lot of time, and we spend a lot of time on that because that's where we're at. And without that, there's no Knights of Columbus. That goes right back to the core principle of what Blessed Michael McGivney stood for.
Wow. You're listening to Faith Alive, and we're talking about the Knights of Columbus, and our guest is Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary and also a member of St. Joan of Arc Parish right here in Toledo. I think that's pretty fascinating that, there's different roles, different opportunities for Knights, because, again, I think there might be a perception
Yes.
of, well, okay, man, I got to start cooking now, or I got to start doing this, but there's different roles and different opopportunities.
There are. And in long time ago, we had this 24 hours a year. If you could donate 24 hours a year, you were doing great.
Yeah.
And for that man, he prayed 24 hours a year, And you knew he was praying more than that in a year's time because you knew he was going to Mass. I mean, having a prayer partner like that is as valuable as having the priest standing up and saying Mass, because that's happening every single day. Yeah. I said, I can't put a price on that.
What are some of the other things the Knights of Columbus does nationwide or in our diocese? Now, I remember growing up, my dad being a knight in the Catholic Order of Foresters. I always wondered if there was a link there between the two. Or are they completely separate entities?
They're completely separate entities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't speak to the Foresters as well as other people can, but they are a separate organization, and they support a lot of very good principles. Unfortunately, I just don't have the history that I have with the Knights of Columbus. At the diocesan and the state level, we support life from conception to natural death. And we do that in many, many different ways. The one way right now, we're currently in the process of raising funds for a new ultrasound machine that would be going over to Heartbeat. Every single one of the ultrasound machines at Heartbeat have come as a result of the Knights of Columbus. So I think we're like $8,000 shy of the 50% that we need, which is matched by Supreme Council. If we raise 50%, Supreme Council will match the other 50%. And we're talking about $41,000 to $42,000 for a machine.
Wow.
And these machines, they're very finite. They don't have infinite use. Technology is advancing every single second. Yeah. And, the machine that they have right now, it's doing what it needs to do. But, if it stops one day, I mean, that's half their cases that they're not going to be able to see and serve of women coming in for that kind of service. So we're currently in the throes. I think we're like at 12,000 or 13,000. I think we need another 8,000. So we're busily trying to raise money for that. And that's in addition to, the matching funds campaign, which supports our church's efforts when it comes to disabilities and developmental issues. It also is above that, where we raise funds for our pastors and our priests and our seminarians. It's above the work that we do to make sure that there's religious education available at the parish level. Every diocese raises funds to be able to support that. I think this past year we gave back to Toledo Diocese like $22,000 or $23,000 for that effort. So the ultrasound machine is something above and beyond that.
Okay.
We also sponsored 2 buses that went to the Washington March for Life. And we plan on doing more of that at a diocesan level. And, that's just here in Toledo. There's ultrasound machines that have been funded and raised funds for in Bowling Green, in Mansfield, in Norwalk, in Vermilion, in Defiance. So there's other efforts across our 19 counties when it comes to the protection of the family and preservation of life.
You listen to Faith Alive, and we're talking about the Knights of Columbus, and our guest is Willi Meyer, the State Executive Secretary. So, Willi, when there's projects like that, like the ultrasound machine for Heartbeat, how do those, let's say I work for Heartbeat, and I'm like, gosh, we could really use a new ultrasound. How does that get the Knights' attention, and how do they then engage? Is it just word of mouth, or is there something more formal?
Yeah, there's a very formal process, because the application for an ultrasound machine funding has to be approved by the diocese, and which comes under the Office of Life and Justice.
Okay.
And so once it's approved there, then the Knights of Columbus step in, and we begin raising the monies for it. It doesn't happen otherwise.
Okay.
Because it has to be approved by the Office of Life and Justice. Once it's done, then we start raising the funds and making sure that we can meet that need. I know that we just had it in Mansfield, where they just finished raising the money they needed, because Mark signed the contracts and everything, an application over the weekend. So that'll be sent off to New Haven this afternoon.
And I know the Knights raises money for a lot of different areas, and for example, like vocations and
Yes.
helping with that. Are those like are there regular initiatives that the Knights funds every year in our diocese and then statewide, nationwide?
Yes. Well, the March for Life, there's fundraisers for that. The ultrasound machine, the matching funds, which serves our developmental disabilities population, and the various programs that they have. Plus, the Knights of Columbus are also there for their big events, the Special Olympics, the basketball free throw. We also have the free throw competition that happens at the council level, moves all the way up to the state level down in Columbus. We had a little over 22,000 youth that participated in that activity. Raising the focus of the family comes in many different ways, and that's just one of them. Then you look at SOS, Support Our Seminarians. Funds are drawn from that. They had an opening session on Saturday morning. They passed the bucket around. I counted just under $1,000. Wow. After lunch, we passed the bucket around again. We got about $600 or $700 more dollars. So in one day of passing the bucket, we raised, almost $1,500 for Support Our Seminarians. That money goes back to each of the dioceses to support the seminarians at that level. And ours would be Father Phil Smith, who's our vocations person right now. And so, that check will go to him. And then as a seminarian has needs, there's some money there to be able to support that.
You listen to Faith Alive, and we're talking about the Knights of Columbus. Is there a challenge ever at all, Willie? Like, let's say at the Joan of Arc council level, where you're like, "Wow, we can only do so much."
Yes.
How do you manage that?
That's when you work together with other councils, and the best example I can give you is the sisters who support one of the sisters congregations that support our diocese and have several members who work here within the pastoral center. We knew they needed a new roof. Joan of Arc renovated the house where they're currently living and made it what it needed to be for them, created a chapel inside, a living space and bedrooms and everything. Well, we knew they needed a new roof. Well, it went from needing one to, if they didn't get one, everything that we did inside was not going to make any difference anymore. Right. So the St. Joan of Arc led the work. We did not have, $20,000 to put on a new roof, but we met with the assemblies, we met with the other councils, and we raised the monies. We talked to contractors. Jamie Aran was the focus of that effort, and he, talked to companies like Owens Corning and other corporations for the materials, and got great deals on the materials, got the labor put together, and the sisters ended up getting a new roof. I mean, they raised, the necessary funds in like 8 weeks, and they got it all project done. I think it took a total of 6 months. Wow. From beginning to end. So even when, we didn't have those kinds of funds at our level, we knew we could reach out to the other brother councils and talk to them and make it work.
Great. You're listening to Faith Alive. We're going to head to break. We'll be right back.
Bible Basics Q&A with Professor Pete.
Hello again. Peter Sabilio here, the Bible teacher from Lourdes University. We love your questions at Annunciation Radio, and it's my pleasure to help with some answers. Today's question comes from Mara, who asks, who is Mary of Clophas, and who is she related to? John 19 says she is the sister of Mary, the mother of Jesus. But wait, 2 full-blood sisters, both named Mary? That was as rare then as it is today. Plus, their words for sisters could mean everything from cousins to sisters-in-law. And in fact, sisters-in-law is just what these 2 Marys might have been. But tracing this family tree not only involves Jesus and Mary, but Joseph too. Let's say that Joseph had two brothers named Alphaeus and Clopas, who are both mentioned in the Bible. Before Mary of Clopas was married to him, she might have been married to his brother Alphaeus first and given birth to James, Josie, Simon, and Jude, as Mark 6 implies. When Alphaeus dies, it would only have been right for Clopas to take her into his home. And when Joseph dies, Clopas probably provided some support and protection for Jesus' mother, Mary, too. So in this sense, and using the sensibilities of their times, Mary of Clopas can rightly be called the sister of Mary, mother of Jesus, and our mother in faith. And James, Josie, Simon, and Jude can rightly be called the brothers of Jesus in that sense of their words. At least that is what Hegesippus says. And he is likely the grandson of Jude himself, so he ought to know. And now we all know too, thanks to you, Mara, and your question. And thank you all for listening. We are listening to you.
Now, back to Faith Alive with Rodney Schuster, Executive Director of Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Toledo.
Welcome back to Faith Alive. I'm your host, Rodney Schuster, Executive Director for Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Toledo. And today's program is completely focused on the Knights of Columbus, and we're blessed to have Willi Meyer here, who's the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus, a member of St. Joan of Arc, and involved in the formation of the council at St. Joan of Arc a few years back. Willi, you were just talking about a neat project that came up to help the Sisters of Mercy, Alma, Michigan, and I know they were very grateful for that effort. That's just got to be so great for the members of and you're just talking one parish, St. Joan of Arc, but they branched out to some of the other councils.
To, St. Patrick's at Heatherdowns, St. Joseph right up the street from us, St. John the 23rd, St. Ignatius. I mean, we reached out to all those parishes, and we reached out to the assemblies. We have 2 assemblies in our area, which is the part of the organization for the 4th degree. And we reached out and we said, this is what we need. I know that some of the funds that was received was as a result of the work that the councils did at the German American Festival. They work out there for 3 to 4 days. And I know that some of those councils used some of that money to put towards that new roof. So it's, there's like we bought a new altar cloth for confirmation because we didn't have an altar cloth that was red, that was dignified. And so we got one now, and then we got the matching vestments. So at a council level, we're able to do that. Now you're talking roughly $4,000 to $5,000 for something like that. And so, we moved money around and we made sure that it was available. And, Monsignor was very, very grateful, and we're working some other projects that Monsignor would like to have us do. During the renovation of the parish, and we moved things around while Father Adam was there. The statue of Mary, the statue of Joseph, we assisted in the purchase of them. The stand that the Blessed Sacrament tabernacle sits on. Thank you. Sits on. We assisted with that. Now, we made a commitment of a large amount of money, which we paid every month over the course of 5 years.
Wow.
And so even when we can't pull the money out right at that moment, we set a goal and we met it and we matched it and we successfully completed that commitment to our parish. So there are ways to get things done. So, you don't have to have a huge fundraiser to raise that amount of money. I mean, you develop plans, you make sure that you're still meeting the needs of your members, but you're also meeting the needs beyond your members.
You listen to Faith Alive, and our guest is Willi Meyer, the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. Willi, what's the bishop's involvement both at a diocesan level and then statewide? Where are they involved and engaged? And God bless our bishops are also darn busy. So I mean,
they are very busy. I mean, take Bishop Fernandez for the Diocese of Columbus. He had an open invitation to come and be at the state dinner on Saturday night. We didn't know if he was going to be able to be there, if he wasn't going to be able to be there, because he was going to be in Washington, D.C., ordaining 9 priests for the Order of Preachers.
Okay.
Because one of them went to the Jofina, graduated this year, and was one of the 9.
Okay.
And he's also a member of a parish in our diocese.
Okay.
I can't remember which one it is. Bishop Thomas had it on his webpage. But he was invited to conduct the ordination. So he flew to Washington, D.C., and then he flew back. He was 45 minutes late for dinner, but we made arrangements to make sure he got from the airport there. And he talked about how important it was for him to be there, not only to talk, but to be there with fellow brother knights and to share with them the joy that he experienced earlier in the day during the ordination.
That is awesome. That is just awesome. And that's inspiring. I mean, for Catholics everywhere, that's just inspiring, realizing they're part of something, a greater good within the faith is for the Knights of Columbus. What's the plan, or is there any areas of focus, Willi, the next couple of years that the Knights is really trying to hone in on? I mean, I know we talked about the charity, unity, fraternity, and the 4th degree patriotism, but are there any specific initiatives that our Knights of Columbus in the Diocese of Toledo is focusing on the next year or so?
We have a lot of members, 50, 60. I mean, I'm in the 60 to 70 age range, 50-year-olds, and we've got a lot of older members, okay? And they'll come out and, tug those garbage cans just like I do. But we need to look at creating a legacy,
okay,
and building that core foundation like Father McGivney did. And that's one of our focuses. The other one is life and supporting life. And currently we're trying to finish off that last $8,000 to be able to fund that machine for Heartbeat of Toledo. That's a non-ending type of thing because the machines, like I said, they age quickly. So life is another issue. Supporting our seminarians, being available to our seminarians. That's a huge focus for the Knights of Columbus. Sending them care packages, sending them cards, going down to the seminarians and having lunch or dinner with them. So there's many different things that we're doing. But those 3 plus the Special Olympics and the developmental disability folks that we spend time supporting. And those are the big 4 that we spend a lot of time at. And that's, at that state level, diocesan level, but at the grassroots level, what that council does for their individual parishes, what they do for supporting life and having marches to the unborn, grave for the unborn. That's just as important. And going all the way down to just saying a prayer.
Yeah. Amen. You're listening to Faith Alive. Our guest is Willi Meyer, who's the State Executive Secretary for the Knights of Columbus. And our program today has been all focused on the Knights of Columbus. Willi, from a national perspective, anything that is on the horizon for the Knights of Columbus nationwide that they're focusing on?
They're at the nation level is focusing on aid and support of pregnancy agencies that are supporting life. And so that's a huge focus on the national level. And they're raising funds to support the other offerings from a pregnancy center, the classes, the food, the clothing, the maternal care, the infant care that's necessary. And so that's an outgrowth of our COVID work. Okay. Plus, we're still recovering from COVID because a lot of our councils pretty much slowed down to a crawl during that time. So we're still working with our councils and rejuvenating them and bringing them back up and getting them more active in their parish level like they were before COVID.
Any idea how many or how much support the Knights here in our Diocese of Toledo gives to various entities?
Off the top of my head, I know that money-wise, we have raised in the area about $500,000 over the last 2 years.
Okay.
And that's at various levels, at the council level, at the district level, at the diocesan level, and you multiply that times 6 dioceses. We just had our Super Cash Bonanza, where we raised a little over $1 million, and that $1 million is going to be used to support the charities and support seminarians. The Damascus Youth Camp. We sponsored, Knights of Columbus sponsored a whole cottage, a whole cabin. Wow. And, we made a commitment of it was either $25,000 or $30,000 a year until it was paid off. That all came out of that Super Cash Bonanza raffle ticket that you buy for $5. The councils also benefit from that because for every ticket they sell, they get $4 back. That's $4 that stays at the local level. $1 went up to take care of everything else.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. Willie, we got about a minute left. How can people, if they're interested in Knights, and let's say they're at a parish that doesn't have a council, or they are, how can they learn more about the Knights and perhaps even get involved?
Yep. If they want to become a Knight or learn a little bit more about the Knights, they can go to the kofc.org. Right on that first page, you'll see us say, get to know us, join button, and it'll send you information, provide you with information. If you want to know more about it, the diocesan level and at your own council level or own parish level, you're more than happy to give me a call, 419-206-8170. I'm still in this position for another 6 weeks, and then after that, I'll be more localized on the diocesan level, so I'll be able to still answer your questions. And if you want to start a council, again, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk with you, go over the process. It can be a little overwhelming, but we can get the job done.
One more time, your phone number.
419-206-8170.
Willie, we're so thankful to have you on. Thank you for all the great work the Knights of Columbus does, and we ask for continued prayers and blessings for our Knights throughout our entire country. You've been listening to Faith Alive. Until next week, God bless.
You've been listening to Faith Alive with Rodney Schuster. For more information about Catholic Charities programs and services, visit CatholicCharitiesNWO.org. You can listen to this and other episodes anytime on demand on the Annunciation Radio mobile app and at AnnunciationRadio.com.